Before you embark on your learning journey, it's a good idea to learn how you can navigate through the course interface and make the best use of the available features. When you access a module, you'll first view the landing page, which displays its title and the content structure. You can begin the module by clicking the Start Module button. This takes you to the first lesson. You can also view the content structure for each module in the left panel. Each module is divided into sections, and each section consists of lessons. You can also navigate to any lesson by clicking the lesson title in the menu. Note that you can go through the lessons in any order, and you can revisit them at any point. Keep in mind that to complete a lesson, you must scroll all the way down until you see the button that indicates the title of the next lesson. You can check your progress of the module at 2 levels. If you're looking for a specific topic, you can use the search feature. Videos are played using a custom smart player, which provides several features. The Captions button enables you to switch off or display the captions in one of the available languages. You can also customize the way captions are displayed by clicking on the caption settings. From here, you can increase or decrease the font size of the captions and even choose between different colors and transparency levels for the caption's text and background. If you prefer a faster or slower playback speed, you can change it in player settings. To navigate to other modules in the course, you click the Previous or Next buttons. You can also click the View Full Path button to view all of the modules available in the course. To complete a course, you must complete all of the modules that are marked Required. You're now ready to expand your learning horizons at UiPath Academy. Happy learning!
Hello and welcome back to the UiPath training. Now in this lesson, we'll talk about working with PDF files and take a look at the specific methods of extracting data from this widely popular file format. Whether in native text format or as scanned images, UiPath allows you to navigate, identify, and use PDF data however you may need. Before we go on, you should already be familiar with extracting data and how to use and edit selectors. For both of these subjects, there are separate videos that go into details, so make sure you check those in case you don't fully understand something along the way. To start things off, first make sure all the activities and dependencies required to work with PDF files are installed. If a simple search in the Activities panel comes up empty, it means you have to install them. Simply go to the Package Manager, search for PDF, and install the UiPath PDF Activities package. After clicking Install, we need to make sure that we clicked Save, so that the activity set is actually installed and the project dependencies are updated. Great! Moving on, you're probably aware of the fact that PDF files can contain text, images, and sometimes text that are actually undercover images. A basic method of identifying which is by simply selecting the elements that you are interested in. Now, as you can see, text can be easily selected, while images are immediately apparent as blocks. Later on, we'll see how to deal with both situations. UiPath has various activities and methods for all your PDF needs, and we'll split them in 2 categories by their intended use. The first category for larger chunks of text or whole documents, and the other for extracting specific text items from a PDF file, like a name, a product, an invoice value, and so on. Now we'll start with the first category, since it's the easiest. For reading whole PDF documents or pages, you can use the Read PDF Text activity. Now, it's pretty straightforward. Choose the file to be read, and the action will output a text variable with the contents of the file. We'll save the result as a text file and also show it in a message box. But you could use other string operations to modify or extract information out of the generated text. The range parameter is an important one because it defines what to actually read. Now, it can be set to all pages, as it is now, or a specific page, like 5 or 12, or a range of pages, say from 3rd to 7th page. Now, we have a one-page document, so we can set it to all or one. Now, when we take a look at the result for the Read PDF text action, we notice that only the text part of the document has been converted. The top two columns of text are present, but the lower half, which is actually an image, is completely ignored. Now that's okay. There's a different action for reading images inside PDFs, as it's called Read PDF with OCR. As its name suggests, it uses optical character recognition to scan the images inside the PDF document and output all the text as a variable. Now, it's slightly different than its non-OCR sibling in that it requires an OCR engine. You can find the available ones by simply searching for OCR in the Activities pane. Studio comes with OCR engines from Google, Microsoft, and Abbey. The engine itself has the usual OCR parameters encountered throughout the app, things like allowed characters, denied characters, language, scale, and so on. Different engines may have different parameters, so make sure to watch the Advanced UI Interactions video if you need a detailed description of how they work. We'll just run with the default settings here. Straight away, you can see that the lower half, the image part of the PDF, is now also converted to text. So that's good. But on closer inspection, the two columns for both the text and the image part of the document have been intertwined together. And that's because most OCR engines are not yet smart enough to automatically recognize the two-column layout in the document. Actually, Abbey is an exception because it preserves the document structure. So, in specific cases similar to this one, Abbey is able to separate the columns. If a certain layout is a recurring pattern, you'll see a bit later how to make a special automation to read it correctly. One thing you should be aware of with OCR technology in general is that its quality quickly degrades with the quality of the source image. Now, as you can see in this example, the end result is highly dependent on font size, font face, and image resolution, things that are not always in your control. So, whenever possible, use the non-OCR Read PDF action. Now, it's important to note that both Read PDF actions are self-contained. They don't require other applications to be opened, so they can run in the background. Now, most other PDF methods you'll see today don't share this quality, so if background operation is important to you, look no further. Okay, now the second method for grabbing large and smaller blocks of text is the handy screen scraping tool. Accessed here in the main toolbar, it's actually an interactive wizard that generates the required actions for you. Simply indicate the text elements that you need to be scraped, and UiPath will show this preview window with a few options. Now, if this is your first encounter with it, here's how it works. This is the preview area showing you the text elements identified inside the selection you just made. Now, this is the current scraping method used, and if you click the drop down here, you can see the other available methods. And this button is used to indicate on the screen another element to scrape. Generally, UiPath detects the best method for your situation. In this case, all three methods work fine, just like we saw before, with only the OCR method reading the image along with the text. When we change the scraping method by selecting its name in the drop-down on the right-hand side and click refresh, the preview updates accordingly. Now we'll go with the default full text method. And hit Finish. In UiPath, connect the newly created sequence to the Start node and take a look inside it. Here, we see the generated actions from the screen scraping wizard, the optional Attach window, and the Get Full Text action with the output variable set. Now, we can display that variable in a message box or use it elsewhere in the automation. And if in the previous step we would have chosen a different scraping method, like OCR, we would have gotten these actions as a result. Right, so these three techniques can be used to extract larger pieces of text. Okay, let's recap. Now in this lesson, we've analysed the ways of extracting text from PDF files and working with it using three different methods. In the next video, we'll see how to extract specific elements from a PDF document. Thank you for watching. Hello and welcome back to the UiPath training. Today we'll continue our discussion about PDF automation. Now we've learned how to extract large text fragments in the previous lesson. Next, let's see how to extract a single piece of information out of an entire PDF document, or extract the same data from multiple files with the same layout. First of all, we'll be talking mostly about PDF documents that are in the most common format, native text, which means its elements are directly accessible to UiPath. If you're dealing with scanned documents, you'll see a bit later some image-based techniques that you can use. So, for normal PDFs, there are a few options for getting to the data. The first one being the well-known getText action. Now, getText is also accessible in the recorder here. Simply point to the element you're interested in, and UiPath will generate the getText action and its output variable for you. Nothing more to it. And we'll display it in a message box. As it is now, this action will only get the value of this specific text element from this specific file. But let's say that you actually want to extract the total value from a series of similar PDF invoices instead of just one file. Now, the getText action, like most UI interactions, uses a selector to identify the correct element and get its value. So, as you've probably guessed, we'll need to tweak it a bit to extend its scope. Now, the automatic way to do that is by using the repair feature. Since we closed the first PDF file, the selector editor shows validate in red, which means that the selector is not valid. However, we can simply click repair and point it to another similar element that should also match the current selector, and UiPath will try to fix the selector for you. In this case, it worked, but since that's not always the case, let's also manually modify it to get an idea of what that entails. A bit of a warning though, we won't go into the general aspects of selectors. I'll just explain this specific example, but I strongly encourage you to watch the selectors video detailing how they work and how to edit and debug them. They're a central part of UI automation, so better understanding them will help in many other situations. So we'll cancel this, not to save any changes, and open the selector again. This time, both PDF files are open, and the original selector is valid. We'll choose to open it in UI Explorer for a better view. The checked containers are the ones that actually make up the selector, so we'll focus on those. The last element has its actual value present, so we need to remove that to make it work for the other values as well. We'll also remove the title parameter to use other files too by clicking on the top-level selector in the Explorer and unchecking title on the right. And through some trial and error, we found it's better to use the more unique row name attribute for this item. Then we'll just click Save, verify the selector by clicking Validate, and click OK. Now it should work for both files. It extracted the correct value from this invoice, and from the other one as well. Great. Okay, so in this lesson, we learned how to extract specific data from a PDF file, and we've reached the end of our lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Hello and welcome to the UiPath Training, the PDF-related video tutorial series. Now, we've already seen how text chunks can be extracted from a PDF file, regardless of their size. Now, there's also a method of extracting a fluctuating value from a series of PDF files, or invoices in our case. That is the anchor base activity. From the start, you'll notice it looks a bit different from other activities. It's made up of two actions because it performs an action in relation to another fixed element, or anchor. A typical anchor is the find element action. We'll use it to pinpoint a fixed element close to our target element, usually its name or here, credit. And the action we want to perform is to get the text. While both of these actions have associated selectors, you'll notice they're a bit simpler. The second one just needs to find its way from the anchor element, so it's only the last row of the full selector. Now, it's pretty generic, so we can leave it as it is. For the anchor element, replace the fluctuating part of the file name with an asterisk and remove this row because it has no unique identifiers. The anchor base also has an optional parameter, the anchor position. Now, it's used to define more clearly where to look for the data. We could leave it as it is or change it to left because that's where our anchor is in relation to the text. Okay, now this workflow should work on both of these files and any other file with the same structure. The anchor base activity is pretty flexible, which means you can use various actions inside it. For example, you can replace the find element action with a find image. The advantages are that now the structure of the PDF document is not that important anymore. What's important is just that it contains the specific indicated image anywhere in the visible document. Also, you don't have to deal with the selectors as much anymore, and because PDF files look the same on all systems, you can use Find Image without its usual drawbacks. But before indicating the image to look for, it's good practice to set the zoom of the document to actual size to make sure you have a complete and accurate image. Simply go to View, Zoom, and Actual Size. Then, back in UiPath, click to indicate an image. Credit in this case, and make a selection around it as an anchor. And it got it. Now, this method can sometimes be more reliable than the others because it can handle even major structural changes to the document, as long as the image and data are present and in the same relationship to one another. Especially since the find image action can handle a reasonable amount of scale variation, and otherwise, PDF documents are pretty stable. Another important thing to note is that these last two methods described require the PDF document to be opened, and the data you're trying to interact with must be visible. Otherwise, it will fail. So, make sure that you take that into account when building the final automation. That's pretty much all for this video. The tutorials in this series should allow you to handle most of the PDF extractions that you'll be faced with. There are a couple more, such as find relative element and scrape relative, but I'll let you discover those on your own. If you're dealing a lot with scanned documents, you may want to have a look at our image-based automations video for specifics on handling images. And finally, let's quickly do a recap to make sure that everything is settled in. We started with two methods for reading larger blocks of text: read PDF text and read PDF with OCR. Now, they're straightforward actions that read entire PDF documents or pages and output a string variable. Then we looked at screen scraping, which is an interactive wizard that's useful for comparing and choosing a scraping method that also generates the actions for you. And for extracting specific text elements, your first option should be the get text activity. Depending on your situation, it may or may not require some selector tweaking, but it's generally a quick and solid technique. Lastly, you experimented with the anchor base activity. Now, it's used to locate a fixed element and perform an action relative to it. It's a very powerful and flexible activity. You can look for an image or element and get the data that's related to it. And that was all. Thanks for watching. Bye.